Maybe we should have an introduction this time around.
Yeah, we didn't do any type of introduction last time.
No, we just did a cold open.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Um, what's up, everybody? You're listening to Literature Only. I'm Tom. This is Liam. And today we're talking about The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway.
Really good book. Better than the last one we did, the short story. This is like this is his first novel, right?
Yeah.
Um, really good. I really liked it overall. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I liked it too. Yeah, that was excellent.
I don't know, where do you want to start with this? There's so much to get into. We could talk about bullfighting, um,
Mm.
talk about how things kind of never change. There's always like this. It really feels modern in a lot of the
Hmm.
anxieties that the characters have. Um, I don't know. Where did you want to start?
What left the greatest impression on you?
Okay, so the writing is really beautiful. Um, the characters feel really real in a way that they kind of didn't in his short stories or the early short stories. Um, okay, we can start with who do you think? I wrote this down. Who do you think the villain is of the story? And I kind of thought Brett was the villain because she's like a manipulator. She's kind of what everyone kind of hates, like the like bourgeois upper class just skating around on kind of other people's goodwill, getting into trouble. And I kind of really hated Jake Barnes in the end when he kind of helped her out in that tough spot. And so the my thought who the villain can be was like Brett, Cohen, or Jake. Like they could all be every single character actually, I guess, could be the villain because Mike and Bill are also pretty repulsive.
Yeah, I mean, well, they're all kind of awful people, but it's crazy because I had the opposite reaction. I thought that Brett was actually the hero of the novel. Like at the end
Why?
when she decides not to ruin Romero because if she
Okay.
stayed with him, she would have just ruined his bullfighting career. He couldn't be a bullfighter anymore.
I saw that as the opposite. I saw it as she does ruin his bullfighting career, and she just thinks that she does hasn't done any damage. He gets beat up really badly. He like he does well in the ring that day, but he like clearly Cohen like gives Jake and Romero concussions, and like they're both pretty harmed. He's like a professional boxer, and he just beats the shit out of them in a really pathetic way too, in a kind of funny way. Um, that's how I saw that. I thought Brett was all, like she was excusing her own behavior.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I didn't really think of it that way. It's really, I mean, the morality of the whole thing is really ambiguous. I do think that Romero is kind of like is also a hero in some way. Like you can tell that at least Jake, or the narrator, like admires him a lot and admires him for his sort of his authenticity and his daring. Like as a
Yeah,
bullfighter, he's a great bullfighter because he doesn't fake the danger.
right.
Like other bullfighters, they like step a little bit closer when the bull is already
Yeah,
out of range and
yeah,
make it look like it's dangerous. And the one guy who's like the older guy who's like the older bullfighter that's washed up, he chooses bulls that are really small and actually not so dangerous. And but Romero like takes on the biggest bull. He takes on the bull that actually killed the one
the runner or
participant.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, the one runner in the runner of the bulls, and he does it slowly. Like he does it with precision, and he's basically just like doing it for show and pushing himself to the limit. And he has this, yeah, he has this authenticity and this daring and this courage that obviously Jake admires because he writes about him in this way, and he's such a great bullfighter because yeah, he doesn't fake the danger.
yeah. It kind of reminded me of like Mishima almost for some reason, like the youth, like the vitality, the like just young, really young guys going out there and like risking his life to for this art. I was going to mention that the bullfighting aspect. What do you think of that? So it's controversial in Spain right now and in Latin America that there is still bullfighting. I watched a couple of documentaries about it, and it seemed okay. It's kind of I kind of have the same opinion as everyone. Like the beginning of the bullfight is really intense and interesting, but they also weaken the bulls a lot. So I watched a bullfight and it's on YouTube or whatever, and like they'll actually like stab the bull many times in the first two rounds before the matador goes in there with the red cape and the sword, so that they weaken the bull a lot. And it's to like make it more of a fair fight because it's the bull is obviously way stronger than a human. It's like I don't know. Like this whole thing about like it's really interesting when you think about it. You're like taking a piece of nature that's really intense, that's really like this bull that's super angry and that like represents, I don't know what it represents, a god or something, and then I don't know, you kill it in a really kind of gruesome way. At the end, at least, it's kind of it gets ugly. What did you think about the whole bullfighting aspect?
Yeah, well, I mean, personally, I don't think I'd ever go see a bullfight in person just because, I mean, there's like an innocent animal involved. That's sort of the morally the sort of problem with
Yeah.
bullfighting is that like this animal didn't do anything. Its nature is to, they're talking about in the book that the bulls are only angry when they're alone. But when they're with other bulls, when they're with horses, they're actually calm. But if you get a
Right.
bull by itself, you isolate it, it becomes angry. And so there's this innocent animal involved. But Hemingway writes, he has a nonfiction book about bullfighting. I forget the name of it at the moment, but in the beginning of that book, he talks about how bullfighting after the First World War was the only place where you could go and experience violence, like where you could go see this spectacle of violence and experience violence. And I think other sports are sort of in the same category. I mean, we watch ice skating, like hockey, even though like people are obviously getting concussions, getting their head slammed in the board, beating each other up. Like, I mean, football, soccer, like there's also an element of danger in that as well. Like, risk of concussions, like heading the ball is a big question in football right now because you headbutt the ball, it can cause like, some brain damage
Oh
and
wow.
you can like get seriously hurt playing football. You can, yeah. But then there's like sports like American football where you're actually like slamming into each other and actually getting serious brain damage and like CTE and crazy stuff. And in a way, F1 is kind of like that as well. Like we watch these guys flying around a track at, you know, 360 kilometers an hour, and they could potentially die and like slam in the barriers and get killed. And I mean, it's that element of danger that's exciting. And it's, I mean, like I said before, it's pushing the limits, the boundaries of what we think is possible
Yeah.
for human beings.
I I wonder why this why is it why did bullfighting survive? Like in Shakespeare's time, we have bear baiting. Remember we learned about that in like
No.
university. We're like, oh, okay, well, there's a bear that's tied to a stake in a ring, and then they release dogs into the ring,
Oh
and
my
then they fight
God.
each other. It's
That's
crazy.
horrible.
Okay, so that's bear baiting. That's around when Shakespeare's writing like Hamlet, and he's
Yeah.
actually competing with bear baiting for like the audience. Like they're like, oh, do I see a play? Do I see a bear fight dogs to the death? So why?
Yeah.
So it's obviously super violent, and then each country has their own traditions of like these extreme practices. And I wonder why bullfighting survived. Maybe because there's a human involved. It's like more humane in a way. Like it's not humane. It's equal. Like the matador could die. The
Mm.
bull more is obviously gonna die more often, but in bear baiting, there's nothing like there's no human is gonna get mauled. So I want. What do you think? Why do you think bullfighting has stayed alive for so long?
Yeah, I don't know. As you were talking, I was thinking about, I mean, gladiators and the practice of fighting gladiators in the ring in ancient Rome. And there was, a sect of people that were like, this is just hedonic and this is just spectacle and it's awful. We're watching, you know, people murder each other. And we're also seeing slave girls being torn apart by lions and just, all for the spectacle. And there's a part of that involved in the bullfighting, I think. But then there's sort of an art to it. And it is a sport as well. There's like a level of physical fitness required. And I think those two things combined is, yeah, what makes it survive. I mean, the closest thing we have to gladiatorial combat today is the UFC, and lots of people watch that, and lots of people think it requires skill, finesse, tactics, lots of physical training. If you're a great like if you're a master at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you'll pretty much dominate. Um, so it's I don't know, it's interesting. I don't know, what do you think?
I don't know. I don't know. At the end of the day, it's just one of those things. There are worse things that happen in the world. It's probably I like the fact that if the bull kills the matador or if the bull puts on a really good performance, the bull goes free. So there's like that's like I don't know, some redeeming quality to that.
Yeah, but then there's the aspect that if the matador gets killed, it's a tragedy. But if the bull gets killed, it's a victory.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, Hemingway clearly likes that intensity. That's a theme in a lot of his like the war, the excitement, the blood, the danger. It's a big thing for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's like an element of violence and danger in all of his books. I mean, there has to
Yeah.
be stakes. There has to be, but I guess the stakes really aren't the point of this novel. I felt like the bullfighting was sort of peripheral, and the relationships and the clashing between individuals was kind
Yeah.
of the
Yeah, let's
real
get
drama of.
let's get back to that. Okay. Um okay, so Jake Barnes is like he's a newspaper man in Paris and he's going to go the first part of the book he's just in Paris, then they go to Spain. And what do you think about Jake Barnes character? He does a lot of things that I would never do, and it's kind of hard to relate to him sometimes. He's just obsessed with Brett. He's just like he just loves her for whatever reason. Like I never really saw the Brett character as that alluring, and she, I mean, for me, like I said before, she was kind of more a villain type.
Jake as a character is, I mean, his whole situation is sort of absurd. There's a point near the end of the novel where the perspective kind of zooms out a bit. It's when Jake is sending the telegram to um, where Madrid, and she says, "Come, I need help," and then he sends the telegram back saying he's on his way. Love, Jake. And then he says like, "Oh my gosh, I introduced her to one guy, Pone,
Mm,
and she runs off with him. And then I introduced her to another guy, Romero, and she runs off with him.
yeah,
And then I sign the telegram with love. Like what?
I
What
picked
is
up on
wrong with me?"
that point as well. It's so pathetic. It's so pathetic. Why would he do that? Why would he like? He's clearly a stand-in for Hemingway himself. He's like quiet, soft-spoken, strong newspaper man, and yet he's just so pathetic. He's so enthralled by this woman who clearly doesn't feel that much for him.
Well, I wouldn't say she doesn't feel much for him. I mean, it towards the beginning of the novel, it indicates that she's actually in love with him and that he's in love with her. And at the end of the novel, it suggests that as well, that they're actually in love, but they can never be together.
Yeah, she can't be with anyone. I mean, she has she has serious problems, and so Mike is he's a Scottish character. He is like her boyfriend. They kind of want there's like hints that they were gonna get married, but
They're actually
Mike just
engaged.
oh, they're engaged. Okay, I totally
Yes.
missed that.
Yeah.
Mike is accepting of the fact that Brett sleeps around, and it's really I don't know. It's like polycule in the 1920s or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jake can't be with anybody either, though, because he has like an injury that prevents him from, having sex.
Wait, what? What is this?
Well, you didn't know that?
No, did I miss? I missed a big part of it. Then what? What? Wait, so he
Yeah.
has? I thought he just had a bit of like impotence. I didn't think he had like an injury that meant he couldn't ever consummate a relationship.
Um, so yeah, there's a part close to the beginning of the novel when he's with the prostitute, and she said like, what's is there something wrong with you or something? And he says, well, yeah, so I got injured in the war. And so it doesn't like come out right and say it, but he
See,
basically
yeah.
has an injury
Okay.
that prevents him from,
I
you
thought that
know,
was him making excuses for the fact that he doesn't like this prostitute or he can't, get it up for this prostitute. Like that's like I thought he was faking it
no.
to like
Well,
shield her
mm,
feelings.
yeah, I don't think so. I mean, that
Well,
can be your
yeah,
interpretation for sure, but
yeah.
I mean, it's very highly suggested that he is like impotent.
Do you think Brett and Jake end up together at the end of the novel? Because it sort of ends with them being really close in the back of a cab.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean,
Yeah,
it's highly
I don't think so.
suggested that. I mean, there's she basically says, "Wouldn't it nice? Wouldn't it be nice if we could actually be together?"
Yeah,
And then he says, "It's pretty to think so." But it's
right.
like it's yeah, it's their love is impossible. It's
Yeah,
which is kind of
it's
the whole tragedy of the novel, is that he feels for her so deeply and that they can't be together.
yeah. Well, she's not. I mean, she's definitely not the type to settle down with someone. Like I think she
Mm.
mentions she's in her 30s and
Hmm.
she's still sort of sleeping with 19-year-olds bullfighters. She's doing all these things. There was a passage on page 160 where I just wrote BPD, and I thought
Oh my
maybe,
God. Liam. Yeah, I think she says she's 34 or 35 at one point.
yeah,
Like closer to the end of the novel, she just outright says how old she is. But I mean, it's
yeah,
that's sort of Jake's admirable quality that he just basically looks past all her faults, looks through them.
yeah. There was one point early on, um, around page 30, where he is. I was really surprised at that. I like remembered how, or I, so I read this book a few years ago, and I don't remember Hemingway being very like sensitive. It's not something you hear about often. But I,
Hmm.
I was reading around page 30 where he's talking about Cohen. He's talking about how he kind of has no friends and how also about Brett. He feels like crying about Brett's situation, and I just sort of thought like he's a lot more sensitive than I remember. He has this, Hemingway has this reputation of being the man's man, and it's interesting in how in his first novel he's definitely not. He exposes himself. He exposes all these very sensitive areas for these characters, and I just didn't expect. I was kind of surprised that it goes against his reputation so much.
Yeah, there's a part, yeah, early on in the novel when he's in his bedroom and he's thinking about the war and all the things that have happened to him, and then he cries. And I thought the exact same thing. I'm like, Hemingway has this massive reputation of being this macho kind of dude bro thing, but I don't know. It's really touching and
Yeah,
sentimental at times. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
even
yeah,
in the book we read previous, in I mean, there's these moments of profound sadness, not sentimentality, but like genuine feeling. I
yeah,
don't know. It's
yeah. No, no, no. I know what you mean.
yeah.
I,
And
I
there's this myth of Hemingway as just yeah, this macho man, and
yeah,
I don't see it in this book at least either.
yeah. Um, should we touch on the sort of racism, I guess racism and anti-Semitism in it? So my initial thought, I thought about it a lot, and I was thinking like the reason the okay, so he uses the N word a bunch, and the reason that bothered me more than the like slight anti-Semitism of the characters, because the anti-Semitism of the characters can be seen as like a description of 1920s Europe. I feel like, and
Mm.
we also Cohen's Jewishness is not like inherent in the way that like Shylock's Jewishness is to the Merchant of Venice. Like we all know someone who stays too long and is like a third wheel and can't doesn't really know when to leave, but that's not inherently a Jewish quality or something. Or it's not inherent to the novel. That's not his Jewishness isn't really important to the novel, and there's a way in which the racism in the novel is just Jake's monologue, so it kind of makes it a bit more disturbing for me. I don't know.
Mm.
What did you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the anti-Semitism was super uncomfortable. I thought, especially, I mean, at one point, I think Mike calls him uh, the K word, which I
Yeah,
will,
yeah,
which I will not repeat. But I mean, he has, well, Cohn is like has the superiority complex, and that's also not like a inherently Jewish quality, I guess. But they keep calling it his like Jewish stubborn streak, which I found was like really, yeah,
yeah,
it's just uncomfortable. But it's, I mean, that's not like that sort of is a description, yeah, like you said, of 1920s Europe. Like people forget that people were this once upon a time, people were this anti-Semitic, and once upon a time, people just like threw around the N-word. So, and it's uncomfortable, but I mean, it's fact, historical fact, and it's not good, it's not right. I mean,
yeah.
but it's
It's interesting that in keeping with his like very detailed description of the world that he sees, that it's included in that. Like it, like if it wasn't there, I would be suspicious, kind of. Or I don't know. It makes sense in the time, in the narrative, in that um, era. If that makes sense.
mhm. And I mean, I think it's part and parcel of Hemingway's honestness. I
Mm.
guess that's a huge part of his writing. Even when Jake lies, there are a couple moments when Jake lies within the book. I mean, Hemingway just writes it out right, or at least Jake, the narrator, admits it.
Well, which parts are you thinking of?
I
Like
mean,
where he sets up Romero and he sort of lies to Cohen.
yeah, he lies to Cone, and then there's one point where Jake says that he's seen Romero perform 3 times before,
Oh,
but he'd
right.
only
Yeah.
seen him twice before, and then he just
Yeah.
makes a
He
white lie,
covers it
like,
up.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw you in Madrid. Um, yeah, but
It's really every character has these really human moments, and it makes
mm,
um even though I called Brett a villain, it's still hard. In like, there's a few things she says where I'm like, oh, I really feel bad for her. Like she is um suffering a lot. Like all like I don't know. I guess this is what happens when you have characters that are really 3D. They're not easy to put in the hero or villain camp.
yeah, and I guess that's the other thing that Hemingway doesn't try to make Jake look good. He doesn't try to make any of the characters look good. He just shows them as they are. So it makes them a lot more human than they otherwise would be.
Oh my god, yeah. They drink. I wonder how real that is about how much they drink. Like they drink all day, every day. I mean,
Yeah, there are several
yeah,
descriptions of they never called it this, but the spins, where a few of the characters are trying to fall asleep and then the room just
yeah.
starts like spinning and he's
Oh,
like, oh God, it's
there's some
like
really
that's
beautiful
so
description.
realistic.
Yeah, he's really good at that, isn't he? He's really good at
Yeah.
there's this one. I wish I underlined it or could find it, but he's like lying in his bed, and he says if he closes his eyes, the bed becomes a boat or something, and it's a very beautiful description of being too drunk and trying to sleep.
I want to talk about two of my favorite uh, quotes or parts of the novel. The first one is when Cone and Jake are in a bar, and Cone is trying to convince Jake to go to South Africa with him. And then Jake is like, hell no, I'm not going to South Africa. It's super far away. I don't want to go. I spend my uh, the rest of the year in Paris and I spend my summers in Spain and I like it that way. And then Kona's just like he's sad and he says I want to read the quote directly because I don't
Yeah.
want to butcher it. He says, I can't stand it to think my life is going so fast and I'm not really living it. And Jake tries to console him and tell him that, you know, every country is just like the movies anyway. Like you're not really missing anything. But he really wants to go to South America. Um, and then Cone says to him, uh, "Don't you ever get the feeling that all your life is going by and you're not taking advantage of it? You realize you've lived nearly half the time you have to live already." And then Jake has to say to him, "Listen, going to another country doesn't make any difference. I've tried all that. You can't get away from yourself by moving from one place to another. There's nothing to that." And that's like, my God, that's one of the best quotes of the novel. And like, I read that and I was like, God damn it, that's like so applicable to my situation. Like, I've moved so much, I've traveled so much, and it's so true. Like, you cannot get away from yourself. Like, your
Yeah.
problems just follow you.
It's a very old concept. I think it's like in Aristotle or Plato or I don't know.
Seneca definitely said it in Letters from a Stoic.
I
Yeah,
think that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
yeah. But it's so true, man. But this isn't saying like I was speaking to someone about this the other day, and it's not saying don't travel. Like obviously, like go experience the world, but it's saying that you can't get away from your problems by traveling. Like it's not a solution.
Yeah. I think maybe travel is like there is a way where you can escape it for like maybe 2 weeks because everything if you like go to a new country and like the first maybe even month is like really fun, everything's novel, everything's new, and you're sort of just focusing on all these new things, and then eventually all everything else that you were struggling with comes back after the novelty
Hmm.
wears off.
Yeah, I mean, the experience of traveling, at least my experience, is almost exactly like all of them going to Spain, to Pamplona for the bullfighting, just like getting drunk, you know, just forgetting about everything.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that's pretty much all traveling is. But yeah, that doesn't help you fix any of your
It
problems.
yeah, and it also just um so as they're leaving Pamplona and everything's blown up, like it's
Hmm.
just like Jake and like I think Mike and Bill sitting, and
Hmm.
he's talking about how it feels really empty, and it just had this really strong like end of summer vibe,
Hmm.
end of the camping season, and you're at the last day of camp and everyone's leaving.
There's almost a sort of a similar feeling, like this feeling of loss in A Farewell to Arms. I'm reading A Farewell to Arms right now. Maybe that's the next book we can do. A little Hemingway streak, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, it's this sort of loneliness, I guess. Well, the beginning of the novel kind of starts off with Jake feels like basically bored. Like he goes to this he picks up this prostitute and they go and have dinner and then they go to some club or whatever and he says several times they just like the people are like, "Are you okay? Like um you seem kind of worked up or something. Like you don't seem okay." And he's just like, "I just feel sick is all." Like he just feels absolutely I don't is he sick of the just the meaninglessness of it all. I don't know. Because the book opens up with a quote from Ecclesiastes, like
Right. Yeah.
saying, like, everything is vanity, vanity of all vanities. The sun rises, it also sets.
Yeah. And just above that, in my book, it says "You Are All a Lost Generation" by Gertrude Stein.
Hmm.
I read a bit of the Wikipedia page for this book, and it was talking about how that was sort of a reference to um he's part of the silent generation, I believe. And so it's like these young people sort of affected by the war, and that this it starts out with that quote because that's the assumption that people had at the time that this generation was going to be really traumatized by the First World War. And this is almost his rebuke to it.
Hmm. Yeah, Well, there's it's really interesting. He attributes that quote, the lost generation, to Gertrude Stein, but in my copy of The Sun Also Rises, it's the Hemingway library edition. There is there's like a fragment basically. And it's a nonfiction, but it's a short story, and it's Gertrude Stein and Hemingway are like basically at a cafe, and they're talking about or no, it's not they're at a mechanic or something, and one of the boys is like a really good worker, because he's not from this lost generation, and he talks about how hard it is to find work. And I think the mechanic is French, and he calls it a génération perdue, like obviously like lost generation. And so I don't know if Gertrude Stein actually, I don't know if that is the origin, like it's just from some random mechanic, calling, basically saying this whole generation is useless because they experienced this horrible war, and now they're just trying to live comfortably. They're just trying to not have stress, not have problems, kind of like the story Soldier Home. And actually very early on in The Sun Also Rises, Jake says that like maybe things would have been all right if I had never met Brett. Like,
Okay.
suggesting that
Yeah.
he wants to have like live this quiet life, just back to normal. But I think I was reading like the Wikipedia entry, and yeah, this is sort of a rebuke of this idea that the lost generation is essentially useless. He's basically saying that they're not. They have experienced, a lot of pain, all this trauma, but they're resilient, you know.
Mm. I also heard that this book wasn't that popular when it came out. It got mixed reviews, which is really interesting because it definitely feels, I mean, I kind of get it, but it also is, it's really surprising whenever these really good books come out and then you realize in their time they weren't appreciated as much as they are now.
Hmm.
Um, you had a second quote. I think I have a quote too that I wanted to go into, but you go first.
Yeah, the second one, Jake says he's basically recounting his this philosophy that he developed. And the philosophy is that you have to pay in to the world. Like you have to spend in certain ways to get certain things out of it. And you have the best time by realizing when you've spent enough and gotten your fill, and then you cash out before you lose too much. I thought I had paid for everything, not like the woman pays and pays and pays. No idea of retribution or punishment, just exchange of values. You gave up something and got something else, or you worked for something. You paid you paid some way for everything that was any good. I paid my way into things that I liked so that I had a good time. Either you paid by learning about them, or by experience, or by taking chances, or by money. Enjoying living was learning to get your money's worth and knowing when you had it, you could get your money's worth. The world was a good place to buy in. It seemed like a fine philosophy. In 5 years, I thought it would seem just as silly as all the other fine philosophies I've had. Perhaps that wasn't true, though. Perhaps as you went along, you did learn something. I did not care what it was all about. All I wanted to know was how to live in it. Maybe if you, maybe if you found out how to live in it, you learned from that what it was all about. And I
Yeah, I like
think
that
that,
one too. Yeah.
yeah, that one's so good. And for me, at least, that's basically, I mean, that's almost the essence of existentialism in a way. It's like we don't know what it's all about. All you can really do is try to figure out how to live in it, like how to live well. And maybe by
Yeah.
living well, you find out what it's all about. It's
Yeah. I like that doubt in there. Like he's like I don't know, I think everyone can relate to it. Like you're making theories of what the world is, and then as you get older, those theories have to change just because your experiences broaden and sort of doubting whether things ever get better. It's
mhm,
very relatable. Like, is anything ever going to change? Is it ever going? Am I ever going to learn from these
mhm,
mistakes that I keep making? Um, yeah, I really like that quote too.
mhm. You had you had a quote as well.
Yeah, after hearing you read it, I'm not as confident. I can't. I don't. I'm not a good reader. Um, okay, so they're seeing the bull. So they're in the ring, the arena, sorry, and they're watching the bull. And he's just describing the bull, and I thought it was really I thought it was really beautiful. Then I saw a dark muzzle and the shadow of horns, and then with the clattering on the wood in the hollow box, the bull charged and came out into the corral, skidding with his forefeet in the straw. As he stopped, his head up, the great hump of muscle on his neck swollen tight, his body muscles quivering as he looked up at the crowd on the stone walls. The two steers backed away against the wall, their heads sunken, their eyes watching the bull. And it's just, I just love that. These little descriptions of this is an intense moment, and it's really beautiful. But just throughout the whole book, there are these like descriptors of life, and that's he's just great at that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people describe his writing as sensual, not as in like sexy, but like so many different sensory experiences, like the smell,
Mm,
the 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 images, like the that bull sounds like just a monster essentially in his cage. It's
yeah, the
like a
swollen
shadow.
muscles, the yeah, the
Yeah,
horns. Oh, it's just beautiful.
yeah.
On page 41 of my edition, Brett is talking about she's wasted 2 years of her life. Oh, not Brett, Frances, who's Cohen's first girlfriend. She's wasted 2 years of 2.5 years of her life, and she's anxious. She wants to get married. She wants to have kids. Um, and she said something that it was really funny, and I thought, like, do humans ever change? Is there ever like how far back does these anxieties go? Like, so she says, I never liked children much, but I didn't want to think I'll never have them. I was like, oh, that's pretty. That's like today. It's like exactly the same. Yeah,
That quote seems like symbolic of the honesty of this book. Like it's not.
yeah. And I wonder how far back these types of anxieties go, because I doubt a woman in 1564 would say that. But
Mhm.
you can say that you could hear that that's could be today, and it's surprising to see it in 1920.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. Especially reading A Farewell to Arms now, there's some passages or sentiments that, yeah, could have happened yesterday. I mean,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
today. It's even just it's so strange that the last book that we read early on in it is there's a part about a breakup. Like it's so like surrounding all the death and violence of the First World War. There's this short part where
right. I
Nick
remember that. Yeah,
Nick breaks up with his girlfriend Marjorie. It's like that could have been. Is that just a universal experience or just an experience that happens always?
yeah. I love those moments in books where there's something that you think is so specific to your age, and then you read it and you're like, oh my God, I, like reading Shakespeare is like this, where it's just amazing how much he saw and how like the little detail on on everything. Like he was such a modern human being. Do you have anything else about this book?
No, I don't think so. I think I've said all I have to say about it. We should
It's
definitely talk
pretty.
about.
Go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
It's a very good book for a first book. I mean, it's incredible. I think he was around 20, around our age, 27, 26, somewhere around there when he wrote this. So, or when it was
Mhm.
published, at least.
Yeah, I guess we should also mention that it's heavily autobiographical. I mean, Hemingway was living in France, in Paris. He was a reporter for,
Kansas
I
Star, I
for,
think.
yeah, Kansas Star. He traveled um, to Turkey, I think, a part of Turkey to cover the Greco-Turkish War. And he would often, in the summer times, yes, go to Spain and watch the running of the bulls and the bullfighting. And Cone and Brett are based off of people that
Oh,
actually lived.
really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and Bill and Mike. Um, yeah, so it's I forget what
They
the
seem they seem so vivid. That makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of that writing about characters that are real. We mentioned Shakespeare, but even Shakespeare would write towards an actor that he knew he had in his troupe. Maybe that's more common than people think it is.
yeah, I mean, there's a term for it. It's called roman à clef. So yeah, French for novel with a key. So it's basically a novel that is about real events, autobiographical, but they're fictionalized for several different reasons. I mean, to alter the events to have a outcome that you prefer, or to change the background or backstory of different characters, and to separate yourself personally from anything that could, make you legally culpable in anything. And I mean, it's an interesting way to write. I mean, and what
Yeah.
do you think about that? I guess all
Um,
books are somehow autobiographical in some way.
yeah. I also it's so like his style is so distinct, and it's really amazing that he developed that um at a young age.
People make fun of his style a lot.
Yeah,
Like,
I texted you that I read it in like just trying to do this Hemingway style. But it's fun to like imitate it. It's almost easy, but it's hard to get right, obviously, because it's Hemingway. But you use a lot
yeah.
of ands, stuff like that.
And you describe exactly what you did, how it
Yeah,
happened.
yeah. You
Yeah.
repeat yourself.
It's Yeah, you repeat yourself a lot. I think I read like someone gave this 1 star out of 5 on Goodreads, and they wrote the entire review in like Hemingway style.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
don't know. I don't know I think if you rate this book like a 1 star, I don't think you understood it. I think. I don't know.
No.
Yeah, anyways. Um, yeah, maybe we should talk about what's going on. How have you been?
Good. What do we, is this okay? So are we gonna make this a section? Is this like the end of the pod? Like, what do we call
Yes,
it
I
last time?
think
Like books and other books and movies or not?
yeah, I mean, this is the part of the pod where we can just we're done talking about the book now. Anybody
Yeah,
who wanted to hear talk about the book
get out of
can
here,
now
leave.
leave. Yeah. And now it's just two dudes talking, I guess.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about? I don't know.
Um, I don't know what's new in your life? What's going on?
Um, uh, battling unemployment. I don't know. Trying to get any job in Toronto in 2024, which seems impossible. I mean, McDonald's. McDonald's doesn't want me. It's the lowest of the
What
low.
did you
I
get a
applied.
rejection letter from McDonald's?
No, I didn't get anything. I'm so beneath McDonald's that they didn't even deign to respond.
Dude, they
I,
probably read that you have a
yeah, they probably
university
saw my
degree
degree,
and then were like,
my
fuck
literature
off.
minor, and they're like,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
I think you should go. I think you're aiming too low, man. I think a lot of things in life is just about confidence and what you believe you deserve. And
yeah.
I think you deserve more than a job at
Thank you.
fucking McDonald's.
I'm
I
gonna go.
think why not the film industry? Why don't you look for something like
I'm so
in
done with
production?
that. I'm so done. It's too much work in too short a time, and then you have to wait around for like a month to get another job. I'm just so sick of it.
Mm, yeah, it is quite inconsistent. But what if you had a job like on the crew somehow, like in the production side?
Yeah, maybe. But that's still the same problem still around. Like you work 12, 14 hours a day, and then you do that for like sometimes 3, 4 months, and you take off another 3, 4 months. It's not very stable. But how about you?
Mm,
How's you're doing a dissertation about Hemingway, right?
not a
No.
dissertation.
Okay,
No,
you're doing
it's
a
not even.
master's something.
Yeah, it's not even a thesis, technically.
Okay.
It's called a MRP. It's a master's research project. or major research project. I don't know. Even on the website, they have it written differently, so no one even knows what it's really called. But the MRP, and so it's uh, not a dissertation. That's for PhD students. It's below a thesis, a master's thesis. So it's basically 60 to 70 pages. And I selected, yeah, Hemingway and Hemingway and existentialism, and how Hemingway kind of is like a precursor and prefigures existentialism in a way.
Oh, okay. So you think, is
Like
he
all
like
the
the OG existentialist? That's what you think, or
oh, definitely not the
no?
OG. I
Okay,
mean I mean the OG is kind of like Soren Kierkegaard, and then
okay.
you know Blaise Pascal was even before Kierkegaard. He addressed some
Not
elements of
Shakespeare.
existentialism. Shakespeare could be, he could have some existentialism in there too. Um, and then like Nietzsche and obviously Dostoevsky and Tolstoy to a degree, but Hemingway kind of anticipated the existentialists of the 1940s in France, like
Okay.
Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. Yeah, just questions about eternity and about God and um, about how to live. Like Hemingway essentially addresses all of these, and also um, the existentialist movement arose out of the First and Second World Wars, and Hemingway's loss of grand narratives, the loss of religion, and sort of the farewell to arms is like basically the loss of nationalism. Without these grand narratives, you kind of have nothing to turn to. You have to sort of invent your own philosophy. Um, so and Hemingway and I mean writers like Dostoevsky as well. The literary guys get to the philosophy before the philosophers, and then the philosophers just make it explicit, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think, yeah, fiction has something. I I feel like the the it's kind of related to what you said, but the real self-help people are fiction writers. Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
people make fun of self-help, but who's I mean, the Bible, Shakespeare, Hemingway, they all have thoughts on how you're supposed to live. It's just not, wake up at 5 a.m. and take a cold plunge. It's like more, it's deeper than that.
Yeah. And I despise self-help too. I don't know, just the way it's written and the tone, just everything about it is yeah, it makes me sick. I don't
Yeah,
know
there's like
why.
a millennial thing about that where I don't know. I think they're trying to be cool and relatable, and it doesn't really land with us. We're Gen Z, right? We're Gen Z.
Yeah, we are
Yeah.
technically. Yeah.
I think that's partly why. Like it just was it like the what's that book? How to Not Give a Fuck and how to
Yeah,
that
subtle
one.
art of
Yeah,
not
that I think it
giving
was
a
it
yeah.
was cool. It was cool. And then now it sort of seems really dated and lame. And I don't know. That whole movement seems out of touch, kind of.
Yeah, it's also like, who are you? Like these some of the self-help writers, like the guy who wrote the subtle art of not giving a fuck. He's just a writer. Like what? But I mean, there are also some guys that I don't know, they're like ultra marathon runners or they're scientists, and some of this
Yeah.
information is definitely helpful, but I mean, is it going to help you
I have
live
a
better? I don't
yeah,
know.
I have this really obscure reference that I'm gonna drop right now. Did you ever see Do the Right Thing?
I think I have.
Yeah. There's this one scene that I like where I think the cops are trying to figure out a crime, and the old like kind of homeless guy, he comes up and he says, um, those who know won't tell you, and those who fuck, I already messed it up.
Those who will tell you don't know.
Something like that. It's like those who would tell you don't know, and those who know won't tell you.
Mm.
So and like I kind of think that like the people who could give you self-help advice, could give you real advice about the real world, are not going to do it because it would blow up their spot. It would blow up their reputation. Like, okay, we all know Nancy Pelosi is a great politician. I mean, like just on the facts, like, right. Okay, it's like it's almost August 2024. She basically just booted out Joe Biden by herself. She's a great politician. She's not writing a self help book. She's not going to tell you how to do it. But you know,
Mhm.
the millennial dude who is like a writer and does all that stuff, he's going to tell you, even though he kind of doesn't know. That makes sense. You know what? I'm going to cut all this. This
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense.
No, no, it makes sense. I think it's like the worst politician are the people who actually want to be politicians, and the people who should be politicians don't want to be politicians, you know? Like
Mm.
anybody who would want to run for office is probably the last person on earth that should be elected,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
Like it's yeah, and anybody who's gonna write a self-help book, you know, you probably shouldn't listen to them. I don't I
yeah,
don't know how
yeah.
to
That was a big tangent. Is there anything else that you've read or like movies you've seen recently that you think were really good?
Mm, no, I watched the Olympic opening ceremony last night and it was super lame. Like I don't know how like this thing this this thing probably cost hundreds of millions of dollars, right? This
Yeah,
ceremony.
yeah.
And it was just like badly choreographed. It felt awkward. There was a lot of like dead air at moments.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it was just yeah, it
I
was kind
only
of
saw
cringe.
yeah, I saw
Like
the
I don't
highlight
even know.
reel.
Yeah, it was weird. And most of the people carrying the torch weren't French. Like
Oh,
Rafael
okay.
Nadal, he's Spanish. He just shows up out of nowhere and starts. He's like the first person to carry the torch. It's like, what's happening here? I don't know. I thought it was bizarre. And it was trying to make this big spectacle, like, oh yeah, the Olympics are amazing, and it was just kind of boring and kind of lackluster. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were talking
Yeah,
about the Olympics before the pod started and
yeah.
how kind of awful it is. I don't know.
I'm still like, a little excited. There's gonna be some drama probably. I saw that they were doing hostage drills, so maybe there's gonna be a hostage
Oh my
taken,
God.
something. Yeah, they were like really practicing for like the worst. I don't understand
Yeah,
I
no.
don't like they were also attacked. The trains were attacked or something.
Yeah, I've heard like a few Russians were already arrested ahead of the games and conspiracy to plan
That's
some sort of violent,
that's strange.
I don't know. Yeah, but I mean, Israelis have, you know, famously been taken hostage at a
Right.
Olympic Games because of a certain political situation that's happening in the Middle East right now. So,
Happening again. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, Canada is already embroiled in controversy. I don't know if
Oh
you've heard about the
yeah, that
women's.
yeah, they like took a drone and like spied on their opponents.
Yeah. So, way to go, Canada. Once again, on the international stage, we look like a bunch of idiots. Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, also unemployed,
Yeah.
aggressively unemployed. Um, gonna start applying for jobs now. I don't even know what I want to. I just want to write and do this
I want
podcast
to
and
write. I'm too cowardly to write. Should we talk about that? It's okay to write. Talk about this.
yeah, of
I
course.
am so afraid. I start writing and it's so bad. It's so bad that it's the most torturous thing I've ever done. And I have to sit there and try and write. When I read it back after a few months or whatever, like I read my old writing, it's like, okay, it's all right. It's got some problems, but like in the moment, it's so intense. Like my hatred for my own writing, it's like, it's impossible to go on. And
Mm.
that's where I am right now. I have an idea and I have characters and all that stuff. And it's just so, there's such a, whatever that thing is, the ego, whatever, it's so intense. Its hatred of my writing is so intense that it's hard to go on. How about for you? How's it going for you?
No, I definitely get that. I think everything I've written up until this point, I've had that sort of visceral reaction to it. Like I've written something and then thought it was halfway decent and then reread it maybe a week later and been like, "Oh my God, this makes me want to throw up. It's so bad."
But there are
But I
parts
think
like that happens. But then I'm sure you also read it and you're like, okay, that's pretty good. There's some parts that are like, okay,
mhm.
right? And it's just wading through that like thin line of like getting it right is so difficult.
Yeah. And I ended up taking a creative writing course, like a master's level creative writing course, which ended up being very helpful because it taught me to just keep working through it. Like every time I would write something, I'd write maybe like maximum 10 pages and then reread it and be like, good Lord, this is garbage. And just throw it out and think, and then get another idea and be like, okay, this actually sounds good. And then start writing it again, write 10 pages, think it's garbage, throw it out. Like just keep repeating that process. I've probably done that over 100 times, but the course taught me to just sit with something. Like you have a piece of work, just keep going with it and just keep writing. And then once you've finished it, you can see what works and see what doesn't work and then try to rework it. Don't just throw out the whole thing. And that's taught me a lot. And right now I'm writing a bit of something. I don't really want to talk about what it's about, but it's the first time ever I've been writing something and have felt like, yeah, this is worth writing about.
It all depends what happens. So if we succeed, this is like a cool like time capsule where we're complaining. And if we fail, no one will ever care.
No one will care. But also, I mean, this pod is great. I don't know. I hope this could
This is fun.
potentially
I
be a
like
success.
this. This is like I feel like we would do this anyways. Like we talk about books anyways, and then now we're just recording it and it's
Yeah, exactly.
maybe we
I mean,
get something from
we've even had better conversations than this, and we haven't recorded it. And I was like,
it.
fuck, I should have recorded that. That would have been so good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we got time. What do you so next week we'll do you mentioned you were reading Dostoevsky. Were you
I don't have time right now with like the
right?
master's thesis. So right now I'm reading A Farewell to Arms.
Okay. I think I have that on my bookshelf as it is, so we'll do that
Yeah,
next
we
week.
can do that. And then um, once I'm done my thesis, which will be on the 15th of August, we
Right.
can
Okay. Good
talk
luck.
about whatever you want. Um, yeah, just for now, it's I'm locked into Hemingway.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I feel like I there's so much like there's so little good Shakespeare content out there. I feel like we could do a good Shakespeare series, especially on some of the lesser known plays. Like there's nothing out there about Henry VI plays,
Hmm.
very little.
Yeah, we could do. I mean, we could do all of Shakespeare. Like
I was
start with his
thinking that. I
first
was
play,
thinking
and
we could, yeah, start with the beginning of his career, get to the end, get to
yeah.
the whatever that
Oh my
last
God,
verse is.
we'll have to read Titus and Andronicus. Oh my God, it's the worst Shakespeare play. It's just such
I remember
garbage.
hating it too. Yeah,
It's just like
isn't that
gory
isn't that
and
inspiring though? Like he's the greatest writer who ever lived. He wrote Titus Andronicus.
yeah, he wrote a
Maybe this thing
pile
that
of
we're
doo
working
doo.
on, maybe this thing is our Titus Andronicus.
It could be, man. Yeah, we just have to wade through the garbage. But I've also been thinking that I don't know, a lot of great musicians, at least, or some great musicians, or some great bands, their best album was their first album, and then
Yeah,
after that, everything they produced was like kind of watered down and
there's some writers
not as
like that too.
visceral. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know, man. Maybe I hope we're not like that. I hope
Who
we.
knows, man? Who knows? You know what? I'm really it's really weird to say. There's some people out there that really inspire me. Kamala Harris, JD Vance, both started in really unlikely places. And look where they are now. Look where they are now. They're vice presidents or they're one that's
Yeah.
gonna, you know, presidential bid or whatever.
I
And
mean,
think about where they started. It's crazy.
If Liz Trust can become Liz Truss, sorry, can become the prime minister of the UK, then
We can become
anybody can
authors.
fucking do anything. Nothing is impossible.
Yeah.
And I was watching this video. This guy, this YouTuber, he turned 40 and he was talking about advice that he would give to younger people, especially in their 20s. And it was one of the biggest pieces of advice that stuck with me was like, be ambitious. Like, like a lot of the
Yeah.
time you think you don't deserve something. You spend a lot of your time moping and thinking, oh, I don't deserve that. But who cares, man? Like we're young. We should
See,
send it.
I don't think like that. I deserve it. I just don't have it.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, maybe it's just me.
No,
Uh,
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. We
Yeah.
gotta go for it. We gotta go for gold. We gotta have the ambition, have the work ethic.
Yeah.
Gotta stick to it.
Stick
Stay
to the
in the game
pod,
long
stick
enough.
to writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep striving, man. Oh, that's another thing. I've been running a lot recently. I don't know. I
Yeah.
think you saw
Yeah. Yeah.
my
Yeah. Yeah.
story
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ran 7.5K. I think that might have
Wow.
been the longest I've ever run without stopping. Like that's like I'm a shitty runner. Like I'm not good. I just started, but like that felt pretty good. I
That's
don't know.
weird. Me too. I feel like I don't know why we're on the same page about this. I run, but I'm not running that far. I'm running like there's stairs in my neighborhood, so I'll run up and down the stairs, get a sweat, come back.
Mhm.
You feel really good when you finish it.
Yeah. You
That
got to get a
feeling is
Garmin watch, man. This thing has been like holding me accountable.
okay.
It doesn't like pull any punches. Like it'll tell me like you're detraining, like you suck, like you need to do better. You need to get better sleep. And it's like, "Oh my God, this thing is like brutal." But
Yeah.
it's honest, so it's like you can't get around it. Holds you accountable.
We have less than 1 minute on this Zoom call before it shuts us down.
Should we just end it there?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you,
thanks for listening,
everyone.
everybody. Yeah, it was great.
Bye.
See ya.